Hi everyone, it's Amy, and today I get to talk to you about how to make painted patterns. This is really a fun method I use. I think it's super relaxing to just paint on paper and sort of get my mind in the mode of pattern creation and think about how I want all of the different pieces to fit together. There's a way you can take these painted patterns and digitize them. And then use them, in collections or wherever it is that you put your patterns out in the world. Or you can just use this as a fun way to paint on paper and have a relaxing thing to do. So I think the easiest thing to do is probably just jump in and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's jump right in. I wanted to share with you what I'm using here. This is a watercolor block. If you haven't used these before, that just means that it's watercolor paper, but it's glued around all the edges so it won't like buckle or pull up while you're painting on it. I'm using 4 of them. You could use more, you could use 6, you could use 8, you could make your painted pattern as big as you want to. I'm just going to paint a pretty quick and simple pattern. I did a quick sketch and I'm going to paint a little strawberry patch for y'all here. I like to work in like the middle of the painting here, and I'm just going to paint on some strawberries. I just paint straight across the 2 pieces of paper, line it up as best I can, but if it's not perfect, it's not a big deal. I am going to speed up my camera for part of this demonstration, just because I think if you watched me paint this in real time, it might get a little boring. To make one of these patterns, it usually takes me about an hour, and I'm pretty sure you don't want to watch me slowly paint for a full hour here. But I'll be sure to slow it down and talk you through the important parts of the process. For this project, I'm using Winsor & Newton gouache paints. Gouache is nice because it can be watered down like watercolor or painted on thicker like an acrylic paint. The nice thing about gouache is that it can be reactivated with water. So if it dries out in your palette, you can just spray it with a spray bottle of water and it reactivates that paint for you. I often paint with acrylic, and with acrylic, once it's dry, and there's nothing you can do about it. So gouache is a little more forgiving if you want to take some time on your art. Now, again, I'm not worried about, covering up all 4 of these watercolor blocks right now. I'm just working in the very middle. Some of the fun on these painted patterns is just letting your brush strokes show and not making everything totally perfect to give it kind of that like, oh, handmade feel. This wasn't made on a computer. This was made with a paintbrush. And any mess ups, like say this doesn't align perfectly well, if I were to scan this in and fix it up later, I could fix that edge in Photoshop. Okay, so I've made a strawberry motif in the middle of my 4 panels. I'm going to add some details, but I'm going to do that at the very end. Right now, I'm just sort of focusing on the layout of everything. So now to actually move these around and create a pattern, what I'm going to do, I have to decide if I'm going to do just, a standard repeat. I would take all of my panels from the left side and put them on the right side. If I wanted a half drop repeat, I'm going to take the top one, put it on the bottom, and the bottom one, and put it on the top. So I guess at this point we have to make that decision. Are we doing a regular repeat or are we doing a half drop repeat? Eeny, meeny, miny, half drop. Okay, so for a half drop, I've taken the top left panel and I'm going to put it on the bottom right. I'm taking my bottom left, putting it on the top right. So that is basically the same thing that you do on Procreate when you're working with a pattern layout and you're shifting things around to figure out how motifs can fit together. This is just like the paint and paper way of doing that very same thing. I don't always do a pencil sketch when I'm painting patterns like this. In fact, I think it's kind of nice to skip the sketch part of it. It kind of makes the whole process a little bit more free flowing and spontaneous as you're creating your pattern. However, I do find that when I'm trying to talk and paint at the same time, sometimes my paintings turn out ugly. So I am doing a sketch on this particular one just to give myself a little help this time. So I'm going to paint in this next bunch of strawberries and leaves. And just like the first round of this, when I get to the part where the paper crosses over to the next panel, I'm just going to paint straight across that and line it up as best I can. I am happy with this section. So now I get to move my panels again. If you remember the last time we did left top to right bottom, left bottom to right top, we can do that again and just kind of see how the pattern is looking. Once I do that and I move my panels, we have a new white space in the middle right here. So then I'm going to work with that space there and fill that in with a little bit more of our strawberry patch. So this one we might even come in at a different angle to help fill in these spaces. All right, let's paint it. One thing to mention about this process, it's a little more unforgiving, I think, than drawing a pattern on your iPad because you can't really erase, right? If you did, hate a section, you can pull off the top layer of your watercolor pad and start afresh in this one section. It's obviously not as easy as the two-finger tap on your iPad, but it is an option. I'm ready to move my panels around. One thing we can do instead of always going left to right, we can also shift it top to bottom. And when we do that, we just take them and leave them in the same places from the top to the bottom. They don't swap positions on that one. So if I do that, I can see a couple areas where I still have some white spaces. I don't really like that they're on the outside, so that makes it harder to weave the pattern all together. So I might do a little half drop here. See where that white space ends up. It's mostly at the top of my composition now. So I am just going to take those top ones, bring them to the bottom, and that's a little easier to work with. Now my white space is right back in the middle of my panels, and I can fill that in again. I feel really good about what I've made so far. Let's move these blocks around and we can kind of see the pattern in motion, which is fun. So we do top to bottom, slide it up. And if any of these views start looking like, oh, that's weird, then we can just add little things and change little things. So let's do a little half drop and see how that is looking. Let's do another top to bottom. I like it. We'll do one more half drop. I like it. I might change a few details, but my alarm to pick up my kids from school is going to go off in like 2 minutes. So I have to stop for now. I'm going to come back to this tomorrow. So I will see you all then. I'm back and it's the next day, for me at least. And today I have a little friend in the studio, which is my basement, with me. Let me see if I can show her to you. There she is. This is our little bird. We have this little birdie jungle gym. And so she'll sit right next to me while I paint. And she can be a little bit chatty. If you hear her, that's who it is. So I'm going to take a couple minutes here and add in the details that I really wanted to add in yesterday. I really like how this is turning out. I do want to add some little strawberry blossoms in for just one more detail. I do like how it is now. So there's always the chance like, ooh, this could ruin it or this could look great. I guess we'll see. I'm going to make them like a light pink. Typically they're white, but I want them to show up on the white background so that I can see them. I think that's good. We'll leave it like that. I'm going to add some centers to the flowers. I think the most important thing when you're making these painted patterns is just to have fun with it. Like I'm adding these little tiny stems on some of the sideways facing flowers, and I really like it. And you just sort of play, add as you go. Don't stress about too much. You might totally mess it up. That's all right. It's just paint. Gouache does dry a little darker, so when you put the color on, you can expect, oh geez. You can expect it to get a little bit darker. I kind of like that. All right, let's paint the background here. Me and the bird. When I paint backgrounds in gouache, I actually love the effect where you sort of get up close to your motif, like in this case, the strawberries. We're going to paint right up next to it, but leave sort of a little white space in between. It gives it kind of a painterly look and just kind of helps. It's almost like a painted outline around your stuff, but it looks very imperfect and painted. And I think it's so pretty. I love that effect. And you'll notice I'm not using like a teeny tiny brush. I'm just using, this is like a medium-sized brush for this area because I don't care if it's perfect. I'm just kind of giving like a painted background impression rather than trying to like get up right next to each and everything and make it look just right. So again, like all the other things we've done so far, it is easiest to work in the middle of the panels and then slide them around and work in the middle again. All right, the last little chunk of white here I'm going to cover up. And remember this spot where I like made it ugly earlier? It's gone. So that's is the nice thing about painting a background is you can just cover up any spots that got a little bit ugly in the painting process. I feel good about this pattern being done. Once I have it totally finished with all the details, I actually think it's just super fun to move the pattern around a bunch of times and see what it looks like. So we can move these around and just look at our completed half drop repeat pattern. We can't test our pattern on a larger scale, but we can look at it from all angles and see if anything looks odd or if we'd want to change anything. Or you can just move it around a bunch and be excited about what you achieved here. All right, so there is our finished painted pattern. So you may ask yourself, like, okay, what the heck do I do with this now that I've made this pattern? I take each one of these and I will remove the top sheet using that open area there. You just I slide a palette knife in and remove that top sheet. And then I would scan all 4 of them in with my scanner and import them into Photoshop. So with just a few tools, you can stitch this all together in Photoshop to create a usable raster-based repeat pattern. I will go ahead and do that with these, and here is the result of that. Another thing you can do if you like the way that your pattern turned out is you can scan it, or you could even just take a photo of this right here, and you could trace that in Procreate and then vectorize it in Affinity or Illustrator or wherever you like to do that. I wanted to show you guys some other options that you could use to make these patterns. The first one, this would actually work really well. These are little canvas boards, and they are pretty cost effective to purchase, but those might work really nicely. Some of them are still wrapped to create a pattern, and you could do 4, or you could do 6. If you're doing, like, I don't know, let's say you're doing it like this and you wanted to do a half drop repeat, you would just take the front 2, flip them, put them on the back, and keep going. I also have some watercolor blocks, and these are rectangle size. So you can make your repeat pattern block, different shapes depending on what you're using. But this size is kind of fun. I've used that one a lot. You can use this aqua board. This might not be the most cost-effective way. If you're just playing and having fun, this is not even opened yet. But these are primed boards that you can just paint right on top of. If you were making something, really special, this would be a fun way to do it. And then you can scan in your pattern, use your pattern, or you could just have 4 pieces of art to frame that all formed a beautiful pattern. And that might look gorgeous on your wall. Oh, look, a kid made things on my paper. You could make a really big repeat if you used, like, these are 8x10s. Arches is like really nice watercolor paper. So if you were going to make something really special, or if you just like fancy things, use your Arches paper. These are just pads of watercolor paper. So they're not blocks, they're not glued on the sides, but you could still use pads of paper. They might like curl up a little bit on the edges, but if you just want to play around and like give it a try, why not? Just use paper. If you just wanted low commitment, you don't want to buy a bunch of stuff, you can just use pieces of cardboard, put a layer of paint on them, and give it a go. I encourage you, like, dig through your art closet. We've all got one, and mine is stuffed pretty full of stuff. But go through your supplies and just see if there's something that you could use. I wanted to find some repeat patterns that I have painted in the past. And, oh, that was a good one. Ooh, I'm going to show you some of these. I don't know. Do you guys file your art this way? Or is it just me? This one was super simple and it's one of my favorites. And I love that you don't have to make things like incredibly complex for them to make a really pretty pattern. And here are these flowers as a finalized pattern. This one, this was a favorite of mine, and it's a half drop repeat. And I used watercolor, and then I used gouache for the darker lemons and a gouache background with this one. This is what the lemons look like as a final pattern. This one, this one was so complex. I don't even want to put it together. I spent so much time on this, and I actually think they're like really pretty individual paintings, but then when I put it into a pattern, I didn't even like the pattern once it was all together. I don't even know how these things go together here. There's so many of them. Here are the birds as a final pattern. This is a fun one. It's like super full. Sheesh, how does this go together? I don't even know. You get the point. They, they go together somehow. Is that it? That's it. Okay, that one goes like that. This is what this one looked like once it was scanned in and digitized. Oh, and then one more. I'll show you this one. I actually have a favorite one that's not in my files and I don't know where it is, but I made this like watercolor forest, and it's probably the most simple of all of them, and I liked it the most. So oh, there's that. What in the world? Oh, okay. Here's that one. So this became this. I hope that you give this a go and get out your paints. Watercolor, gouache, acrylic, any of it will work. Any of those surfaces I showed you would work for this. I am happy to show you the whole process of how I stitch mine together in Photoshop. I don't know how many people there are here who use Photoshop or if there would even be a want for that. So reply and let me know, and maybe I can do a part 2 and show you that. That's a little bit more complicated. The painting is the fun part. The Photoshop for me is kind of like the tedious part. But I'm happy to share that process with you guys as well. Yeah, show me what you make. Yay. Bye. Did you guys want to see my bird one more time? I do have a little like bird obsession. Okay, where are you? Oh gosh, what are you doing? It looks like she's headless. She's just, oops, she's like cleaning herself. There she is. There's the head. Gone off the rails a little bit. Okay, bye.